Scientists say your fridge is like your nervous system, which explains why mine looks like it's in fight or flight mode. Everything's either fleeing to the back or fighting for shelf space. But welcome everybody to another episode of Becoming Human podcast. Today I got a really cool concept. So if you've ever lived with someone, then you know that not everyone has the same organization awareness when it comes to organizing the fridge. So I got to thinking, your fridge, your mind, what does your nervous system say about how you organize the space? Or could you even say, order in the fridge, order in the soul? Really cool concept. Uh, so to dig a little deeper in it, I wanted to kind of dig into the root word of organize. Um, Part of this is just my love for science and biology and music. So the word organ, from the Greek organon, meaning instrument, tool, organ of the body, eyes, a suffix meaning to make, to render, to cause to be. So at the root, to organize, to make something function like an instrument. So it's about bringing parts into harmony so they work together as a whole. When organs are in balance, your energy is organized. When stressed or inflamed, disorganization arises. So this was really fascinating to me because I view food as an extension of my body, right? So I view it as something that's living. So I tend to handle it with care, and I want food that's very energetic, so that uh, my energy is energetic, right? As opposed to foods that are low in energy, heavy to digest. It requires a lot more energy from you to digest those foods. So um, food isn't just fuel, it's information. It organizes the frequency of your energy. And when I started to really understand that concept, um, it became harder to put foods in my body that wasn't gonna elevate my level of awareness, which um, elevated my perception, which allowed me to engage my nervous system in ways that gave me more control over how I responded to things and became far less reactive. So, um, a good way to think about this is our organs organize us, organs in your body, and our choices organize our organs. The things you put into your body, right? They um, allow your organs to relax. They allow them to contract and pulsate and detox themselves. But when food is too heavy, they expand your organs. They don't have the flexibility to move. They become hard, and you end up holding on to a lot of rotting food and waste within your digestive system. So, and together, this organization shapes the music of our lives, our energy, our clarity, and the capacity to serve ourselves and others. Um, when you think about like eating the food that's super heavy or overstimulating, you tend to have a big crash and you end up having itis. And for me, for a long time, that was very normal. In fact, I thought that was a sign of a good meal. Now, it may be good taste wise, but that could very well be the sign of something that's probably not so good for you. In fact, when food is very energetic and living and vibrant, the opposite tends to happen. You tend to be energized afterwards. So just want to pose the question because I think it's fascinating to me. Not saying that this is exactly true or factual per se, but what if the way your fridge looked is more than just a reflection of your habit? it's a reflection of your nervous system health. Think about that. I mean, it definitely has some truth to it, but I know that's not 100% true for everybody. Now, what kind of got me thinking about this concept and playing around with the idea is, I was around some folks who were very stressed and very tense, and they would have food and have some leftovers or whatnot, and just toss it in the fridge, just anywhere. Slam the door, walk off, and then a little while later they were like, "Hey, where's my whatever, such and such? Where?" And and the other person would be like, "It's right there, right where you left it." And they were like, "Oh." And so I'm like, okay, is there some correlation here between uh, being tense and having a messy fridge? Uh, Correlation doesn't always mean causation, uh, but sometimes it could be an indication of something happening simultaneously, working together underneath the hood. And so that really fascinated me. So today we're exploring the hidden link between um, environment, nervous system regulation, and I want to throw a third thing in there: meditation. So I want to introduce a particular part of the nervous system, or a theory involving, or the vagus nerve. But I want to introduce polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. Um, he talks about how safety, stress, and social engagement shape our nervous system state. So when I was first introduced to the vagus nerve, I thought it was super fascinating. So poly means many, vagus means wandering. So this nerve, it wanders all throughout your body, your gut, your back, your lungs, your thyroid. Um, it's kind of everywhere, and it communicates to your brain. It's all through your body, and a huge portion of it is in your gut and in your back. When I first learned about it, the researcher who um, was introducing it, used a wildlife scenario, and wildlife scenarios are very popular when it comes to describing the nervous system, because it's very sophisticated, but it does have some very primal responses. But you do have the ability um, to interact with those responses and dictate uh, how they play out. But he said that when he imagined that when human beings were being chased, there was a threat. A lot of times it's a tiger in these stories. Um, if they had the time and the luxury to stop, turn around, look over their shoulder, that meant the threat was gone. Now, that motion is actually one of my favorite qigong motions, because when you bend like that, you contract the organs, right? They move, you get blood flowing, and then you also stretch the vagus nerve in your back. Um, so if you've ever gotten a massage on your back, or massaged your abdomen, or took deep breaths into your abdomen, you see both of those motions trigger relaxation within your body. So it makes perfect sense that he would come to that conclusion, whether or not a tiger was involved or not. I just like having fun with that. So research shows that clutter and disorganization can create cortisol and anxiety. Conversely, orderly space signals safe and predictability, supporting your parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So sympathetic nervous system, you get the symptom of stress, anxiety. Parasympathetic nervous system, uh, I like to think of it as you and your nervous system, a pair working together to bring about calm in your environment. So I have my own little wildlife analogy, um, to back up what we just read. So if take a human being and you place that person in the Great Plains, it's open field, I would say that person would be a little bit more at ease than being placed in the jungle or forest where they can't see, 10 feet in front of them, and there's all types of animals, or jaguars and stuff like that that can pounce out at you at any moment. But in the Great Plains, if there's an animal like that, you have a greater chance of seeing it from a greater distance away, therefore giving you time to adjust. So that's my own wildlife analogy that corroborates what we just read. So orderly space signals safety and predictability, right? Which allows you to relax a little bit more. So meditation. So want to introduce a cool exercise, and I like it because for a long time I didn't know what being mindful was. I hear it, I heard it a lot, but I know you've probably heard me say before that if you're stressed, I don't know how mindful you could actually be, right? Because some part of you is always anticipating what's going to happen next, right? Whereas when you're relaxed, time behaves differently, and you get to fully engage with the moment or whomever's with you. And so when it comes to making transformations in your life and taking your life and your intentions in the direction that you want them to be in, you have to it's very helpful to be present so you can get more of the results that you want to get. But knowing what being present is super helpful. And exercising that muscle is super helpful. So that's what we're about to do right now with the fridge. All right, so stand in front of your fridge. Take 3 deep breaths. 2. 3. Can't pass up on the chance for some deep breaths. Just notice what's there in your body. What was it feeling like before you? And now what is it feeling like after you've taken the 3 deep breaths? Now open the fridge slowly. Do you feel calm and curious? Do you feel rushed and irritated? Or checked out and overwhelmed? I would imagine most people don't give a great deal of thought about how they feel when they open the fridge. For a lot of us, it's just kind of a mindless thing. Now, would you say that the state of your fridge matches the state of your nervous system? Like, for instance, if the fridge is orderly, would you say you feel calm? Or if you're calm, is your fridge more orderly? If the fridge is chaotic, would you say you're in fight or flight mode? Or if you're in fight or flight mode all the time, is your fridge chaotic? Or if the fridge is empty, do you feel neglected or shut down? Or if you always shut down and you feel neglected, is your fridge normally empty? Just explore that for yourself. And if it feels chaotic or empty for you, to close off the breath exercise, say put one hand on your chest, one hand on your abdomen. All right, and then we're gonna breathe in for 4 seconds, and then we're gonna exhale for 6 seconds. And imagine bringing order to your inner fridge or your nervous system when you do this. whatever peace, order feels like to you. Right? Imagine that sensation. You go in, out, in, out. Relax your shoulders, in, out. You do this for a couple minutes. Doing something simple like this could just help you uh, be aware of your feelings when you step into certain situations. You know, I always talk about environment, and um, our environment trains us, whether you realize it or not. And when you open your fridge, there's a chemical reaction that happens within your body, and if you're not aware of it, or if you feel helpless and out of control when this happens, we've just worked on a simple tool. We just did a simple tool that could uh, really help you gain some control in those situations. So, you know, the polyvagal theory explains why behavior isn't just about willpower, it's about nervous system state. If someone is living in stress mode, um, they'll shop more frequently, they'll eat more frequently, and they'll organize chaotically. Um, Therapy, being mindful, meditation, um, help with self-regulation, and it can shift that state of your nervous system to something that's more calm, and also shift the state of your fridge. So this is important because um, food is I think in our culture in a lot of ways is symbolically tied to security and survival. And I know growing up, it was always a sense of pride to have a full fridge, because you knew not everyone um, had that, right? And I want to add another angle to that too, just to add some more context, and hopefully this makes sense for a lot of people. So when we look at our genes, for example, you are a copy of uh, your parents' genes. Your parents are a copy of your grandparents' genes. Your grandparents are a copy of your great-grandparents' genes. And this goes way, 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 way back. And this memory gets passed on from generation to generation. In fact, what really creeped me out one time when I was a teenager was my mom had this picture of one of our great, 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 great aunts. This was probably over 100 years back. This picture was old, and some of those old pictures are kind of creepy anyway. But this woman looked identical to my mom, like identical, and it's really like creeped me out as a kid. But that's an example of how that memory and those genes get passed forward. Now this happens with tendencies as well. I've seen pictures where, you know, I had the exact same um, posture as, say, my grandfather when he was a young man. How is that? I never knew him as a young man. And I've seen that same thing in other family members as well. Or you may have the same twitch as someone, like to pull an ear, or, where does that come from? That's memory that gets passed down from generation to generation. Those genes from your ancestors from way back when are still in you, and they embed themselves in culture too. So if you look at that concept and you look at not so far ago, large parts of the world were having conflict over food, and there were places that were malnutrition and undernourished and had very, very simple high carb diets, and populations were very sick. and there were lots of conflict. And this wasn't too far ago. Maybe 1,000 years ago, and there was a nice stretch where um, large portions of humanity was living that way, and some of that is still going on today. A lot of those conflicts. But the point I'm trying to make is that memory gets passed forward too. In fact, study on the vagus nerve shows that information in the form of intense information, you can say trauma, gets passed down for at least 14 generations. So if you look back in history and you see these conflicts over food, and people not having enough and being starved, and so forth and so on, uh, it makes a lot of sense why there's a lot of food addiction, right? Why people have the desire to consume way more than we need, um, way more than what's necessary. There's this urge to always have more than enough, and I thought that would be helpful to share, and just another angle to look at it. And I like looking at things from multiple angles and trying to see as well-rounded of a picture as I possibly can. It really helps me put things together. Um, so moving forward, um, a messy fridge equals subconscious stress. Could a messy fridge be subconscious stress, overstimulation, or possible decision fatigue? Um, could a neat fridge be? Could a neat fridge signal self-regulation, uh, foresight, and nervous system being calm? Something to think about. So here's a study from UCLA. Um, their Center on Everyday Lives of Family study. It says cluttered homes equal cortisol, um, higher cortisol levels, especially in women. Another thing to think about. And meditation research shows that mindfulness improves executive function, leading to more intentional habits, including organizing, food prep, um, shopping choices. So meditation strengthens prefrontal cortex over the amygdala. Better impulse control, more conscious food choices, and naturally, that could lead to a naturally neater fridge. So your prefrontal cortex is normally associated with, it's normally called like your executive function part of the brain. And it helps you, you could think of this as like leading the charge, if we're going to use a war term, but just being out in front, um, and allowing you to organize your life in the way that you want to with intention, as opposed to the amygdala, which is a part of the brain you can say that's kind of blind because it's kind of tucked back, and it's reacting to stimuli in your environment. It's a very primal part of your brain. So the more you can relax your body, not sleeping, but relaxing. Meditation can bring about a form of relaxation because it can raise brainwave states. You can measure this. Being joyful. That's a way to raise your brainwave states, and essentially, you're relaxed, but you're alert, and that's what you want more of. That alertness while being relaxed. You have more energy flow, and you essentially will have better executive function, right? Because you're not feeling as overwhelmed. So another cool way to look at this is when you're stressed and overstimulated, your functions of the body turn off, but you are also requiring more energy because it's leaving. More of your energy is going towards resisting things in your environment. When you're relaxed, your body then starts to generate more energy, recycle more energy, and you're losing less energy. So it's just something to think about, and some of the power of meditation. Um, and when you practice mindfulness in one space of your life, it generally spills over into others. Um, just think about when you experience something good, you normally want to spread that and extend that and share that with people and share that in other parts of your life. So this is no different. So there was a story that I heard by a lady. Um, I didn't know her. I just kind of heard it in passing, but it was very profound to me because it was the story of so many people that I heard my entire life, but she had a particular insight that I didn't hear from people, and so she kind of found her way out of the loop that she was in. Um, she, in her story, she shared that um, her whole life, whenever she had food, she just had to eat it all. Whenever there was food around her, she just had to eat it all. She couldn't let anything go to waste. Didn't matter what it was, whether it was the worst thing for her or good, she just had to eat it all. She would try diets and weight management plans and personal trainers, and nothing would ever last. Um, One day, kind of on a whim, she had the intuition to try some therapy. Well, she started to uncover some things. She realized that, um, when she was a kid, her mom would say, you better eat all your food. There's kids starving in other countries. Um, and we've all been told that before, but everybody internalized things like that differently. For her, it was a source of guilt and shame. Um, you know, we don't know why those emotions arose for her, but that was what came up for her, was guilt and shame. And so every time she sat down to eat for a huge portion of her life, there was this guilt and this shame, and she would try and eat to get rid of the guilt and the shame. You can't suppress emotions. It doesn't work. You can't eat emotions away. You can't use a substance to get rid of emotions. They don't work. The spiral will just continue. You have to process emotions. That's the only way to break that cycle. And so her having that epiphany and her being able to address that aspect of herself, that guilt and that shame that she had around having enough food, which, um, propelled her to overeat to make sure none of it ever went to waste. Um, she was able to address that aspect of her life and was finally able to um, have some lasting changes. So I want to read some more, some stats just to be helpful. And this isn't about shame. I feel like, in my own personal experience, once I had the awareness of things that were kind of getting in the way of me having the type of life and experience of life that I wanted, then I was able to address those things and make the changes. But prior to that, I was just kind of putting forth effort, sometimes more effort than was necessary, than I needed to, and still wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I find that to be the case for most people. So some of this research is from UCLA. It's from Healthline, World Metrics, and PubMed. Right. So after diets of 2 to 5 years, at least 1/3 to 2/3 of people regain more weight than they lost. Again, this isn't about shame. This is about being aware so you can make adjustments that you want to make. Within 1 to 2 years, over 50% of the people will regain a significant portion of weight loss. After 5 years, around 80 to 95% of people regain nearly all or more of what they lost. I was sharing with a friend once the power of therapy and the power of groups. And this isn't unique to a friend. I find this to be very common, and it was very common in myself at times, and still may want to be present in some areas of my life depending on what it is. But denial is a very, very strong muscle that we've built over the years. You know, as human beings within our society, what have you. Uh, but what if you could make your muscle of awareness stronger than your muscle of denial? Then you can start to shape aspects of your life the way you want it to be, and not just be at the mercy of the stimulation around you. Right? So, the last part of the stat: long-term dietary treatment success with therapy and behavior support, somewhere around 15 to 30% maintain weight loss over many years when diet is paired with group therapy, behavior modification, etc. So, what does this mean? A lot of diets show initial success. People lose weight, but sustaining that loss is the hard part. The longer the follow-up, the worse the odds of keeping the weight off without relapse. And so this is the power of groups. You have people in a group that is at every stage of the process. And you can see someone that's a few steps ahead of you who's having success, which gives you inspiration and insight into how you could do the same thing. And because they're not so far ahead of you, you don't feel overwhelmed, and you're not over comparing yourself. So you can move your way around the group, this person, that person, that person, and people tend to have more support, and where they want to be becomes more attainable. Let's see. Failing a diet doesn't mean you're a failure. It often reflects under-supported change, biological pushback, metabolism, hormones, physiological stress, environment, and environmental pressure. Right? So that's what we were talking about earlier, learning how to check in with yourself. Of course, you can check your heart rate. But you can put your hand over your heart and do that yourself. You can sense when your heart rate is elevated. But of course, there are machines you can buy at Walmart or any of those places like that could do that. There may even be some apps, right, where you can check your heart rate. You can breathe. Let's bring it down. Hormone levels, we could test that. But you can feel it. You don't need a test. This is about checking in and being aware of what's happening in your body. So, why therapy and behavior changes matter? Well, because therapy helps tackle many of the hidden or systemic reasons diets fail. So, mindset and belief, understanding emotional triggers, self-worth, identity around food and body image. These often sabotage dieting efforts unconsciously. So, we talk about body image. A lot of times people think about women, but, I talk to a lot of men who have this phobia around being too thin, right? And, not really understanding how muscle work and how to put on muscle and what foods you can use to put on muscle. A lot of guys go about doing it in an unhealthy way. And I understand why. But that's a huge phobia for a lot of people. And, it talked about environment and mindset. I mentioned how your environment trains you until you can become mindful enough to start arranging your environment in a way that that nourishes you. Um, I was explaining to a friend that, um, you don't go to therapy as a sign of weakness because you don't feel like you can handle your problems, but you go to gain insight. Um, and if the therapist is really good, they can even help you come up with a plan. So you could pinpoint all of the things in your life that's triggering you, and you'll have a plan, right, that you put together outside of that environment that's not being where your perception isn't being pulled by that environment, and having that plan put together with the help of someone who's not emotionally tied to that environment could make a huge difference, right? Because now it gives you the opportunity to be objective, which is hard to do when you're in an environment that's pulling you. So, a really cool story about how your environment can train you. Um, I lived with someone who, uh, we had a clash at one point, and um, the door that he would walk through the house in, it had this creak. And every time I heard that creak, I would instantly think about um, all the reasons why I didn't like him or why he agitated me. And so I learned through my own self practice, if you don't like someone and you have to be around them, sometimes it's helpful to go above and beyond to be extra nice. So something I did was I went around just putting WD-40 and just doing maintenance, like that, just to, it's good to do anyway, and it's a good deed. But simultaneously, I was getting rid of the creak in that door, so I didn't have that trigger, and my mind didn't go to that space. So now I'm putting layers of interruption between that trigger. So not only did I not hear the creak in the door, I also had other exercises that I did to interrupt that thought pattern. So these are ways that you can start to reshape your environment in little ways that's not a big overhaul, right? Um, and you can reshape your environment to fit your intention and allow you the space to build new muscles to have a healthy nervous system. Um, Behavioral tools. These are the benefits of therapy. Behavioral tools. Learning sustainable habits rather than relying on sheer willpower. Things like how to plan food, manage cravings, self-monitor behavior, not just following rules. Now, this one is so powerful. It's so huge. A friend of mine, we call him a health guru because he really approaches food from a spiritual level and has a wealth of knowledge to share. And when he worked with clients, one of the things he would do is would clean out the pantry, throw out everything. And that in itself was very emotional for folks. You don't realize how emotionally tied to your food you are until someone comes and throw it all out. There's a large degree of comfort associated with food, and we know that we comfort foods. He cleans out the pantry, the fridge, throws everything out. And you start from scratch. He teaches you how to shop for things and combinations that are going to be delicious, but also way more healthier for your body. Give your body some life. Allow your body a chance to heal. Give your body a break. And the other thing he would do is help people pinpoint restaurants in their area that they can order from or drive past on their way home from work, so that when those cravings kicked in, they had a healthy option that was readily available, just as they would with an unhealthy option. So this was so thoughtful and so fascinating. And I've been eating super healthy for like 6 or 7 years, and I had some health things going on, and you probably wouldn't have guessed that due to how I look. but uh, I did. And I've been eating healthy for like 6 or 7 years. And one of the things I noticed is like during the summer, it was so easy to eat healthy. I eat tons of fruit and had all of this energy. But in the wintertime, especially growing up in northern hemisphere, um, up north, you when it gets cold, you start to eat heavier foods, more carbs, more fats, and sweet potatoes and breads and all of these things. And sometimes when the season would change, when it would start to get cold, I would start to crave heavier foods. And one of the challenges you face when you eat healthy is foods are a lot lighter. And if your body's been conditioned to want a heavier food at a certain time, it doesn't matter if it's good for you or not. The craving will still be there. So having tools in place is helpful. Um, Long story short, um, I found a restaurant that had a chickpea crust pizza and had like lots of delicious toppings that I could put on it. And I was able to satiate that that desire without um, indulging in a way that violated, um, the direction that I was taking my life in. Right? Because then that can come with like shame and guilt and all of that stuff. And if you haven't had the tools to work through that, then again, another spiral. So that was super helpful for me, and that pizza was a lifesaver for me as I made changes and was trying to work through. And there was a couple other places like that too where I could get some food that was heavier or felt heavier, but it wasn't uh, unhealthy, especially not to the degree of the things that I probably would have ate prior. Okay. Um, Addressing stress, trauma, nervous system regulation. So chronic stress changes hunger, fullness cues, hormonal balance. Healing these can reduce some of the push to overeat, binge, or um, abandon the diet. So we were talking about that a little bit earlier. When your body is relaxed. So think about it. When you hang out with someone that you haven't seen in a long time, you're super happy to see them. Um, your body's actually in a relaxed state. It's just very alert, but your guard is down. You're relaxed, and you forget to eat. I see people who are on medications forget to take their medications, and if they wasn't feeling relaxed and joyful, they'd be consumed with. They'd be ruminating. Oh, I need to do. So that relaxed state is healing. It truly is, and you have more energy. You recycle more energy. You release less energy. You generate more energy within yourself. Support and accountability. So therapists can help people stay consistent, navigate setbacks, and develop realistic expectations. Social support, including group therapy or support groups, boost maintenance on the body, and they boost your self-maintenance. Research shows that diet plus group therapy outperform diet alone. Long-term view, therapy helps people see change as a process, not a sprint, creating sustainable identity shifts rather than quick fixes. Now, we talked about groups earlier. Something that was a game changer for me, and this may come natural to some people, but for me, it wasn't natural. All I knew was to work hard. I didn't know the value of a plan. And I meet a lot of people who work really hard, but never learned how to formulate a plan. That's huge, right? It gives you a level of intention and control over your actions every day, where you can measure your growth, right? So you don't just feel like you're at the mercy of everything around you, going through all these fluctuations all the time. Um, and so you create a plan with the mindset that life is continuous growth. There's not this point where you get to where you get to throw plans out the window for forever, and I mean, you can, but as long as you're striving for something, right? Striving, not chasing, um, not clinging, but you're striving. As long as you're striving for something, it's helpful. It's very helpful to have a way to measure your progress. And that was a game changer for me. That was huge. I seen people do it. I knew it worked. I tinkered with having plans, a little bit. Um, but to me, like, the focus was just on putting in the work, working hard. And you burn out. You burn out when you can't see what you've done. You have these spurts where you do so much in a little bit of time, and then you're like, okay, well, what do I do next? And you end up, for lack of better words, wasting time. Now, you know, ultimately, if you grow from the whole thing, there was no time wasted. But you get what I'm saying. Now, some of the takeaways. Do a reset ritual, at least once a week. Do it every day if you can. But finding ways to check in with yourself. Check in with the fridge if that's a point of tension for you. If the state of your fridge resembles your nervous system and it's something that feels chaotic to you and very stressed, check in with yourself on a daily basis, and keep food that nourishes your system and keeps it balanced. I'm not going to go into like what foods you should eat, because I know health is on a spectrum for a lot of people, and I always be mindful of that when I'm speaking about food and nutrition to folks. Because the fact of the matter is, someone may live a lifestyle that supports a very healthy or a very heavy type of eating, and they're okay with health on that spectrum, where that style of heavy eating could be very detrimental to another person's health. So I always try and meet people where they are and be mindful of what's healthy to the individual and where they want to be. So next time you open your fridge, ask yourself, does this space reflect safety and calm, or stress and survival mode? I want to leave you with an affirmation. I've actually never said this particular affirmation before, but I have in some roundabout way in other ways. So it speaks to me, and feel free to use it if it speaks to you. May my outer space reflect my inner peace. And I like to breathe when I do something like that. May my outer space reflect my inner peace. All right. So lastly, I want to end with a joke. So have you ever noticed most Zen people have the neatest fridges? Like, they open it up and there's rainbow colored meal prep boxes organized perfectly. Meanwhile, mine look like my nervous system. Unpredictable, overstimulated, and one wrong move away from spilling pickle juice everywhere. It's alright. Maybe it's hilarious to you. It's okay. I like it. Kind of corny. Corny's good. But like always, I share things that were helpful for me, because it may be helpful for someone. Someone out there may really need this, but it's here whenever anybody's ready. So I share things that are helpful for me because I know they can help someone. May this reach whoever it needs to reach, and don't underestimate your ability to make huge transformations while asking yourself simple questions and taking small steps every day. I hope you have a wonderful day.